2020 has been a weird year for every single human alive, but I've tried to make good on it, making tons of amazing content for First Aid Spray. Seriously, if you're not subscribed, you should do that, as well as play a good number of video games, both new and old, that I missed out on originally. And I'll be honest, it's been nice in the last year plus that every time I've finished something I've not had to write a 1700 word review and all of that, even if I have spoken about several of them elsewhere on the internet. But I played one game during quarantine that had such an effect on me that I mentally haven't been able to leave its world for very long in the weeks following, so around 7 months after moving away from this channel to concentrate on First Aid Spray, I promise that's the last plug, I felt this game begging me to talk about it more. I had to get it out of my system, and so here we are. After years of not wanting it, Final Fantasy VII Remake was actually surprisingly oh, wait, sorry, wrong thing. At E3 2015, Guerrilla Games revealed their long-awaited open-world RPG that had been previously leaked via concept imagery to the feverish excitement of thousands, and I was among them. But being exclusively Team Xbox at the time, as I patiently awaited what would ironically go on to be one of the most disappointing releases I've ever experienced in Halo 5, I put Horizon Zero Dawn not in the back of my mind, but perhaps in a box in the mental attic somewhere, and moved on, trying not to think too hard about this badass hunter lady taking down a hulking dinosaur robot in this beautiful new post-apocalyptic sci-fi world. Until that is, I finally got a PlayStation 4 in the summer of 2019 and knew that I could now work my way down the list of numerous exclusives I had missed. See opening paragraph. I think I've probably said several times that I don't tend to do too well with most open world games due to them often being too open for me to enjoy them. For me, it's all about balance between choice and direction, which is bizarre because Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I adored, was really all one side and not the other. But in reality, the concept of Horizon was so alluring to me that I couldn't resist it, and by some virtue I went in as blind as possible, so I didn't really think about the open world nature of it. One reason why is the pure strength of the story. To use Breath of the Wild as an example, the game had debatably few storytelling moments and was more about you, the player, using Link as your avatar. For Horizon, the game really wants you to view the world from outside of it, as a witness to the story of Aloy, together unravelling the mysteries of the old world. You as a 21st century video game player, and her as someone who has grown in a world that has turned technology into religion and mysticism, and how it all went away. So this is my attempt as a review of Horizon Zero Dawn. The world that Horizon takes place in is our own, just 1,000 years into the future, where different tribes of humans are wary of not only each other, but the machines that at one stage they lived in harmony with. However, a virus known as the Derangement is beginning to make them aggressive to all who come close, and worse yet, larger and more dangerous robots are appearing as the months go by. A tribe by the name of the Nora live in halls carved from rock and metal, praising a large structure that they refer to as All-Mother. This sacred symbol to them, in reality, is a door, and one night from that door comes a child. Without a suitable explanation, the child is brandished as a curse and goes into the caring arms of a disgraced outsider. Aloy grows up singled out, bullied and segregated from other Nora children, with only her father figure Rost and a small piece of Old One technology called a Focus for company. After training for years for a Nora rite of passage called the Proving, which will allow her to rejoin society, controversy ensues regarding an extremist group that tries to assassinate the now young woman that Aloy has become. This and the door that the Nora praises All-Mother, speaking to Aloy and Aloy alone, bring questions that our outcast friend has always had to the surface about her true identity. And that is just the first few hours. I couldn't possibly tell it all in this video, nor would I want to, but that really is the surface level for a game with a universe like I've scarcely encountered before. Come for the rad machine fights, stay for the incredibly detailed lore. I'm serious too, each machine has a reason and a purpose for existence, and all of their designs right down to specific pieces of hardware are logical. Each tribe has some degree of detailed backstory, but plenty of their own customs, and it's enveloping learning how they all view the world differently. And as Aloy journeys through the land, she and the player unravel mysteries about her own identity, the machine derangement, and how the world became to be in the state that it is, and it's all woven together wonderfully. Optional files and audio recordings take the world even deeper and begin to flesh out a timeline of events of not just the current day, but also what led up to the precise moment that things changed forever. There are several moments that feel like that moment in Resident Evil, coincidentally, where you yourself are reading the diaries of the end times of these people and understanding the sorrow, frustration, and moral dilemmas that led to this new world. If you're a fan of games with brilliantly scrutinized universes, then Horizon should be the top of your list, and it's one thing that makes the story so wonderful to experience. Another is character design, character performance, and storytelling. All of the major NPCs were flawed, three-dimensional and lovable, from monarchs to soldiers, from hunters to basically serial killers, and Aloy interacts with them all in intriguing, touching, and oftentimes hilarious exchanges. Instead of channeling yourself into a player character, dialogue choices in Horizon are always different facets of Aloy's personality. I love this touch because it gives you choices to lean into, whether you want to see her react more logically, empathetically, or aggressively, but it means that whatever you do choose is an insight into this character and her journey. Aloy is hugely important to the world, whereas other open world RPGs throw the player into a very exciting situation. Events often happen around and through them regardless of who exactly they are. Aloy is the centerpiece in this story, and that's just one way that the balance is struck between exploration and direction. Horizon Zero Dawn's gameplay has a lot in common with similar games of the era and genre. Exploration is made up of climbing particular ledges and surfaces, as well as riding mounts to cross longer distances. However, the neat trick here is that there aren't actually any animals large enough in the world to climb on top of, so one of the many uses of the focus is the ability to hack machines to make them friendly. It's also used in investigatory segments akin to games like Batman Arkham Asylum to track your way to the next objective, and most importantly, in the first stages of battle. Horizon's combat is one area where the game stands out among its contemporaries in that it's a fair bit more deliberate and strategic than most. Sure, fighting humans is simple, but machines are a darn sight more threatening and must be approached with caution. Whether it's scouts like Watchers, foragers like Lancehorns, or bigger, more aggressive combat-focused robots like Sawtooth, each one is made up of very specific parts that can be precisely targeted and destroyed. These parts also all have their own weaknesses to various elements and can be disabled quicker when hit with fire, ice, electricity, etc. In doing so, Aloy can drastically change the tide of battle in her favour. By hitting fuel tanks, the player can create elemental AoE explosions. By focusing on claws and cannons with tear-focused weaponry, the player can remove metaphorical strings from their target's bow, in some cases grabbing the fallen pieces and turning the tide against them. Some machines have scanners to sniff out hiding prey or camouflage modules, all of which can be targeted to change the flow of battle. It makes fighting so much more involving and makes each scenario genuinely different. For example, even though I really like the latest Tomb Raider games, Horizon makes games like this look so much more straightforward and repetitive by comparison. There are over a dozen machine types to fight in a myriad of ways, with a bunch of different weapon types, including but not limited to tripwire explosives, elemental bombs, rope casters for temporarily restraining an enemy to focus on a specific part or another enemy entirely, and arrow ammunition that can include corruption for turning machines rabid to make them attack each other. Physical one-on-one combat is a little weak, but the variety means you'll largely leave it untouched anyway, and with machines as threatening as they are, a plan of attack that likely includes some degree of stealth is always a good option too. Speaking of comparison, Horizon's climbing got some criticism for being a little stunted in that it was made up of lots of, but nonetheless very precise pathways to follow, especially when you look at how Link can scale any and all surfaces in Breath of the Wild, which released around the same time. This I didn't have much of a problem with, however I did feel like I was missing something when roughly halfway through the game I'd obtained all of the best weapons and all of the best armour and modifications for both. It meant that my inventory was almost always full of collected parts and scraps that I A, had no use for, and B, no reason to sell either. But that was before the Frozen Wilds DLC, which, ramble here. The new machines in that area were so tough I needed to use both blaze and chill water infused ammunition so much that I actually used a load of my money having to restock on it, so that did at least balance it. Also, Frozen Wilds? Probably the best DLC I've ever played. 20 more hours of content added to the game, an absolutely brilliant, beautiful story in its own right that helps to add more to the overall campaign. New enemy types, new weapons, new armour. It was great. Anyway, this script is getting kind of ridiculous already, so let's move on. Horizon Zero Dawn, by some coincidence, somewhat recently launched on the PC, and yes, it had an absolute ton of performance issues getting off the ground, which really does suck, but when players got it working, it meant they could get the most out of the game's engine, which kind of boggles my mind because Horizon on a non-pro standard PS4 is still one of the best looking games I've ever played, so I can scarcely imagine what it looks like on a high-end Windows machine. I never messed around with camera modes in games before Horizon, but my poor Twitter followers had to deal with me posting a bevy of screenshots, so shout out to you guys, you kind of figured this video was coming, right? I could not stop and gawk and intermittently screw around for a few minutes posing Aloy and taking a snap for the old photo album of my adventure, cruising through forests on a broadhead, ascending and descending snowscapes, being stalked through the deserts by stormbirds, and often, best of all, seeing how nature had reclaimed the old world. Post-apocalyptic nature takeover is a genre all in itself at this point, and it's beloved. I feel like The Last of Us did it really well, and I sing its praises for bringing so much colour into what could have been a drab experience, but Horizon had actual experts look at this stuff, and it shows. The whole world feels so real, and it's a joy to move around, plus the gameplay system that encourages players to gather medicinal herbs, potion ingredients, and wood for arrow crafting means that it actually behooves you to fast travel as little as possible, which means you can get into all kinds of side adventures with random events as you explore every nook and cranny for secrets, which I did to a 100% completion rate. The audio department is no slouch either. Over its lengthy campaign I had absolutely zero issues with sound design. In fact, the game uses it to great effect in combat by giving you warnings about what potential threat is coming from an off-screen machine. Stuff like the watcher wind-up noise and the focus starting up sound are the perfect balance of mechanical and organic. Elsewhere, the various vistas of the world all have their own audio style. The music is also top-notch in some places, and where it doesn't always hit hard, it's definitely serviceable. The game does have an inventory song which is, well, it's a decent track, but pausing to change your weapon, outfit, quest, waypoint, check your machine catalogue for a reminder of a weakness, etc, etc. You'll hear these 8 seconds or so over and over and over again, and it doesn't matter how good the song is, that's not something that anybody wants. Nothing about Horizon Zero Dawn should have worked quite the way that it did. It was a brand new IP, which is always a risk, with a female lead, which according to Ubisoft is always a risk, zing, and it was developed by a company that only had experience with grimy FPS titles. Yet Horizon became a tentpole for the PlayStation 4 and one of the console's best sellers. On a personal level, I don't think I really need to sum this game up, do I? It may be that I'm out of practice with this review writing thing, but this whole video was an unconcentrated mess, and hell, that's probably going to say a lot about the process. I loved Horizon enough to come back to this channel just to gush. Because guys, geez, remember the nerd alert thing that used to come up? Nerd alert, yeah. This is probably one of my favourite games of all time. It's one game, and Horizon could be my new favourite franchise. The world is so inviting, the story was such a great ride, the gameplay was so strong that I played for over 80 hours and have just been waiting for the right moment to go back and attempt ultra-hard New Game Plus mode. I could probably squeeze that in before Forbidden West, right? Because how exciting is that? New machines, new swimming gameplay, you've got all these plot threads hanging. I would take a guess that the Red Vines are Demeter's doing, and we're going west, which could not only mean more Ossaran backstory, which was great, but we might find out more about the Kaja that tried to travel this way, as well as actually getting to see the Tenakth in more detail. Yes. Anyway, I hope the 2020 has treated you all as well as it could have, and I guess I'll see you when Horizon 2 comes out.